Training 1950 enumerators. Those are census takers. Film number 4. And film number 4 is income, what it is, and how to report it on the population schedule. 1950 census enumerators went through a training program before they actually took the count that included listening to phonograph records synchronized to frames of 35mm topic films. In that way, all enumerator training groups throughout the United States and the territories reviewed the same material. Now, it turns out that a number of years ago, I was able to get 3 of the training film strips. These were film strips that were put in, the old film strip projector. And I've already put one of these online, the where and how many, because I did have the audio for it. I have recently gotten audio for the income training film. And I thank the University of Missouri at Kansas City for making that possible. So the combination of the two allows me to make this YouTube video. I want to point out that this film, looking at it from a 2021 perspective back to 1950, shows a really lack of diversity of people and a number of 1950 stereotypes. So be warned.
Income.
What is income? I should know that, but how do I report it? Guess that's something I don't know, but I'd be glad to learn.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Mr. Enumerator, because in this film, we're going to point out the 3 kinds of income you'll have to report in the population census and give you some answers to questions respondents will ask. And there will be questions. Suppose we start with one you'll be hearing quite often, like,
why do you need to know this?
Well, briefly, when we get all our income figures together, they show the number of families in each income bracket. That is, the number with incomes under $2,000, the number with incomes between $2,000 and $4,000, and so on. Then we can tell, in general, how many families can afford things like new clothes and furniture, T-bone steaks, automobiles, or houses. By using this information, businessmen and farmers have some idea of what and how much they should plan to produce and expect to sell. Another question that will come up is,
but I filed an income tax return. Why can't the government get this information there?
because we want figures from everybody, including people with small incomes who don't have to file returns. We also want our figures to include veterans' payments, relief checks, Social Security payments, and the like, which aren't reported on income tax returns. No, income tax returns won't give us the information we want, but copies of the returns can help respondents figure out their answers to our income questions and should be used whenever possible. Never ask to see a copy of an income tax return, though. If you do, the respondent may think you are checking on him. Use the return only if he offers to read you the information from it. Sometimes a respondent may think you're checking on her anyway, and she'll say,
How can I be sure that you won't give this information to the income tax people? I'm not hiding anything, but when the government starts checking, they can always find an error.
Our figures are never used to check on anyone. The information we get from each person or family is held in strict confidence and is never seen by anyone except sworn employees of the Census Bureau. We use the figures to show totals and averages only, not to show the income for particular families or individuals. So much for the respondents' questions. Now the question you've probably been asking yourself is, just what is income in the population census? Income in the population census is money received from any of three sources: from wages or salary, that is, from working for someone else; from working in your own business, farm, or profession, working for yourself; or other money received from such sources as interest, dividends, veterans' allowances, pensions, or rents. You will record income received during last year from these three sources. You'll find that most households you visit will have at least one person with income from our first source, wages or salary. Let's talk about this type.
Last year, Mrs. Bain, how much money did your husband earn working as an employee for wages or salary?
Well, my husband made $3,100 last year at the plant, but then they took out some deductions. Is that what you mean?
Yes, we want his total salary before deductions. So I'll enter $3,100 for your husband.
Wages or salaries are received by people working in many different types of jobs. For instance, factory hands, office workers, and others in private and government employment receive them. Members of the armed forces receive them in the form of pay and allowances. Many executives in business and government are paid annual salaries. Some salesmen get commissions which are counted as wages or salary. And so are the tips received by waitresses, porters, or cab drivers. However, free meals or free living quarters given a servant or an employee as a part of his pay are not counted. Only money income is included. In every case, wages or salary refers to the total amount of money earned by an employee who works for someone else. Your next income question is about money received from a business or profession.
Last year, how much money did your husband earn working in his own business, professional practice, or farm, Mrs. Bain?
Well, I guess the answer to that is none. You see, Joe's salary is the only income we have.
If Joe had been in business for himself, you'd have obtained his net income, that is, his total receipts less the expenses. Expenses for the business or professional man are things like the payroll, materials purchased, overhead, and taxes. For the farmer, expenses include such items as the cost of labor, real estate taxes, rental or repair of machinery, fuel, feed, and fertilizer. And speaking of farms, the farm operator's income is from his own business. He works for himself, even though he is a renter or a sharecropper. But the farm hand who works for him gets wages. The last income question is on money received from such sources as interest, dividends, veterans' allowances, pensions, and rents.
Mrs. Bain, last year, how much money was received from interest, dividends, veterans' allowances, pensions, rents, or other income aside from earnings?
Let's see. Joe got 2 or 3 checks from Veterans Administration, and you said rent? Well, I suppose that would include what our lodger, Sam Jones, pays us for his room and board, would it?
Yes, it would. Now, what would be the total of those veterans' checks and what you made from the board and room, Mrs. Bain?
It is a mistake to think that only wealthy people have incomes of this type. You yourself have some of this kind of income if you have a savings account. Or if, like Mrs. Bain, you have a roomer or boarder in your house. Income of this kind may also come from the government, such as unemployment compensation, Social Security pensions, Armed Forces allotment checks, and workmen's compensation or veterans payments. Other examples are the alimony received by some divorced women, or the monthly check that old folks get regularly from children not living with them. So far, we've spent most of the time telling you what income is. Now, here are a few examples of what you should not consider as income. Money borrowed is not income. Money withdrawn from your bank account is not income. That money was counted when you received it and put it into the bank. Money received from the sale of your personal property, such as your house, car, stocks, or bonds, is not income. The allowance that a husband gives his wife or children is not income if they are living in the same household. Money received in one lump sum from inheritances or insurance is not income. However, money received regularly from inheritances or insurance, say every week or every month, is income. Now that we've told you what income is, here are some tips on how to record it on your census schedule. There are 6 income questions, 31A, B, and C, and 32A, B, and C in the sample section at the bottom of the schedule. You will ask the first 3 questions, 31A, B, and C, for each person over 14 years of age who falls on a sample line. If the sample person is the head of a family, you will ask not only the first 3 questions, but also 32A, B, and C. Always make an entry of some kind. If you are given the amount, write it in on the line beside the $sign. If the respondent had no income, put an X in the none box. Never leave both a line and a box blank for any question that should be filled. Well, that's our story on collecting income data. Wonder if our friend, Mr. Enumerator, has learned anything from it.
Sure. Now, both industry and government use census income figures. which we can't get from income tax returns because everyone doesn't file them. And some kinds of income are not included.
The tax returns can help respondents in answering your questions, though.
But I never asked to see the income tax form.
Right. And remind people that our figures are confidential. What else?
Well, I'm to find out about 3 kinds of money income that was received during last year, like wages people get for working for someone else, income people get from working in their own business or profession, like a dentist.
That's net income, remember. Total receipts less expenses.
Yes, and the last kind is money people get from rents or interest or pensions.
You know anything that isn't counted as income?
Well, you mentioned money withdrawn from the bank and borrowed money or lump sum inheritances.
Those are good examples.
Well, have I skipped anything?
Very little, Mr. Enumerator, but I've just one more tip I'd like to give you. Whenever you can, ask the questions as they're worded on your schedule, and you'll be making your job easier in reporting income.
I hope you enjoyed that training film number 4. Again, it is a 1950 training film. This has been another of my JDW talks. I have YouTube talks on Census resources, probably about 10 now. Ellis Island, 10 for just the 1950 census. Ellis Island, manifest searches, other topics. And as many of you know, I'm a retired field biologist. I have natural history topics, mainly birds, birding optics, and I have some virtual birding field trips and others. There are other videos that reflect my interests as well. So good luck on your searches for people on the 1950 census, which will become public on April 1st of 2022.